pertinently observed in the Southwest African case that it is a serious indictment on the African continent that some African states, themselves beneficiaries of the right to self-determination, soon became latter-day colonizers of less fortunate peoples in countries that happen to be their neighbors. And that is exactly the situation we are living. So it is not only Morocco pretending to have the territory of the Western Sahara, it is French Cameroon that has been laying claim to the southern Cameroons. Even as you saw the presentation, Nigeria at one time for 40 years was laying claim to the southern Cameroons as part of Nigeria. The fact that our anti-colonial struggle is firmly located and situated in international law. Everything we have done is consistent with international law. We have not broken one single word of international law. And we advisedly from the beginning decided that we must stay within the framework of international law. To begin with, you do have the United Nations 1960 binding declaration on the granting of independence to colonial countries and peoples, United Nations General Assembly Resolution 15 of the 14th December 1960. 5 things I must highlight. It says that the subjection of peoples to alien subjugation, domination, and exploitation constitute a denial of fundamental human rights, is contrary to the Charter of the United Nations, and is an impediment to the promotion of world peace and cooperation. 2, that all peoples have the right to self-determination, and that by virtue of that right, they freely determine their political status and freely pursue their economic, social, and cultural development. 3, that inadequacy of preparation, be it political, economic, social, or educational preparedness, shall never serve as a pretext for delaying independence. 4, that all armed action or repressive measures of all kinds directed against dependent peoples shall cease in order to enable them to exercise peacefully and freely their right to complete independence and the integrity of their national territory, which must be respected. Finally, that immediate steps shall be taken in trust and non-self-governing territories or all other territories which have not attained independence to transfer all powers to the peoples of those territories without any condition or reservation, in accordance with their freely expressed will and desire, in order to enable them to enjoy complete independence and freedom. That's the first thing I want to draw your attention to, the provision of the binding United Nations Declaration of 1960. Second thing to draw your attention to, one of the foundational principles of the African Union is the principle of the intangibility of borders as obtained on the date of achievement of independence of each African state. French Cameroon achieved independence from France on 1st January 1960, and its frontier became frozen on that date. That disentitles French Cameroon from claiming territory beyond those frontiers. Any such claim is a territorial aggrandizement claim, which is impermissible under international law. There has been no subsequent boundary treaty modifying the international boundary of French Cameroon. International boundaries established by treaty are not changed by verbal political statements or by violence for that matter. Long ago, the Stimson Doctrine denied recognition to territorial changes obtained by force, by subterfuge, or other measures contrary to international law. And the United Nations has repeatedly reaffirmed this. And that is why the principle of non-recognition of territories acquired against international law is now a well-established principle under international law. 3. The African Charter on Human and People's Rights recognizes in Article 20, 1, the right of all peoples to existence. 2, the unquestionable and inalienable right of all peoples to self-determination. 3, the right of colonized or oppressed peoples to free themselves from the bonds of domination. And 4, the right of colonized or oppressed people to resort to any means recognized by the international community to free themselves from the bonds of domination. I submit to you that the people of Ambazonia constitute indeed a people within the meaning of international law. And this was reaffirmed by the African Human Rights Commission in his ruling in Kevin Gumni against Republic of Cameroon. That was, I say, reaffirmed, because if you look at United Nations resolution referring to the Southern Cameroons, they always take the trouble, the pain, they always take the trouble, and because to say, they refer to the people of the Southern Cameroon. It's always their people. So the Southern Cameroon was not and has never been a nondescript territory. It's not some virgin land which is just available for anybody to move in and pick. It has a population. It has a people. The next thing you might want to ask is, what about French Cameroon? Is it an alien country in relation to Ambazonia? Here too I submit to you that yes, indeed, it is an alien country, a foreign country in relation to Ambazonia. First, the colonial history of French Cameroon dates from the inception of German colonization in 1884. But you recall that our own colonial history goes far back before then, many years before then. So the fiction, which has already been propagandistically promoted by French Cameroon, that we are one because of a so-called German colonization. German colonization was in French Cameroon's side. We were before that time under British colonial rule. Second reason why French Cameroon is an alien country, a foreign country in relation to Ambazonia. In theory of law, the British Cameroon and French Cameroon were separate, new legal and political entities created in 1922 by the political force represented by the mandate system. Before then, there was no such known entity known as French Cameroon or British Cameroon. The juridical basis of existence of French Cameroon and the international basis of the frontier that exists between French Cameroon and Ambazonia dates as far from the mandate system transmuted into the Churchill system after the Second World War. So we are talking about two separate and distinct territories, separated by territorially grounded boundary treaties, which are available. And this cannot be changed. It would be a complete mockery of international law. Further, the Southern Cameroon has never had any connection with France. Never. It has no ties and has never had any ties with France, whether historical, political, colonial, economic, social, or cultural. France, of course, has been using French Cameroon as proxy state to access the wealth and natural resources of the southern Cameroon. But otherwise, we have no connection whatsoever with France. Whereas French Cameroon has that connection in every respect. And often French Cameroon prides itself when making speeches, recalling the very fruitful relationship they had with France, going back into history, economic relations, political relations, social relations, cultural relations, and so on and so forth. There is no such thing as far as Ambazonian is concerned. And there's not one dime of French developmental investment in Ambazonian. Not one. So again, two distinct and separate territories. One firmly anchored within the French mold, and another having no such connection. Ambazonian shared with French Cameroon a short-lived period of German colonization. It was too short, and I will submit, less than a quarter of a century, in fact about just about 22 years. And as we saw in the film, by 1907, 1910, the Germans were still trying to pacify under unclaimed territory. Remember, international law had changed at the Berlin Conference. No more can a colonial power arrive at the coast of Africa, claim the coast, and say it is claiming the hinterland. No, that what used to be the case. Once you land at the coast, the hinterland, it was called the sphere of influence. You claimed it. In 1884, at the Berlin Conference, they changed that narrative and said, no, there must be effective occupation. There must be effective occupation. And that is why, when the British transferred part of that territory to the Germans in 1887, the Germans, who were already in part of French Cameroon, what they call French Cameroon, now had to start the task to effectively occupy, because without effective occupation, the Germans could not have claimed any such territory. And they moved into a territory by 1893, fought the war, as we saw here, with the King of Boya. And they started pushing upwards, claiming territory. Each time they claimed territory, they planted the German flag, and so on. Unfortunately for the Germans, the war came when they had not been still completed. And you will see the boundary treaties between German Cameroon and Nigeria, and also between German Cameroon and French Equatorial Africa. You notice those treaties were only concluded when? In 1913, later part 1913. So those boundary treaties, the boundaries were not certain at that time. Unfortunately for Germany, less than a year later, the war broke out. So I'm saying the period of German colonization was so brief as never to have elicited any sense of oneness between the inhabitants of our homeland and the inhabitants of French Cameroon. And that is why it was so very easy that when the French got a part of what French Cameroon, they easily amputated two major parts of it. One part was called the Duck B. That part went to France, a part of Central African Republic. The other part is called the New Cameroon, which, as you saw on the map, German Cameroon went down right down to the Congo. That was part of it. So the French simply amputated those parts and reabsorbed them into French Equatorial Africa. And up to today, no one has argued or can possibly argue that those territories, because at one time they're part of German descent, are therefore part of French Cameroon and should constitute a so-called one and indivisible country. And I'll submit to you further that if you were to buy that theory, which of course under international law makes no sense, because historical consolidation has been rejected by international law, if we start talking about history, I'll submit to you that Corsica, Nice, Savoy, Alsace-Lorraine would go back to where they came from. Alsace-Lorraine will go back to Germany. Nice, Savoy, and Nice will go back to Italy. If that thing about history were to found very valid. I also submit to you that if you buy that theory, Senegal will be able to claim what? The Gambia. Eritrea, of course, will go back to what? To Ethiopia. Djibouti and northeast Kenya will back to Somaliland. The point I'm making is that kind of discourse, that kind of narrative is very destabilizing for world order. I'll even say that if you buy that, then the whole of Western Europe should be claimed by the Turks as part of the Ottoman Empire. Or Italy will claim the whole of Europe, part of the Roman Empire. French Cameroon itself, the whole northern part called Abadamawa, will be claimed by Nigeria because Nigeria exercised colonial sovereignty over that part of the territory. So ladies and gentlemen, I'm saying this kind of language cannot be sustained and must be rejected outright. But this is the kind of narrative, this is the kind of propaganda which the current colonial occupier of Ambazonia is projecting and must be rejected. Next, I would submit there is the issue of the plebiscite. Sometimes when these things are raised, people said, oh, but there was a plebiscite at which you decided to join French Cameroon. No. The very concept, the very notion, the very decision by the United Nations to organize the plebiscite in the southern Cameroon had legal implications. The first one was that the acceptance, the admission, and the establishment of the fact that Ambazonian had international personality, and that it has a clear identity, and it's a country separate and distinct from either Nigeria or from French Cameroon. So a distinct territory. And the United Nations kept on saying that the British should never do anything in their administration so as to lose the identity of the southern Cameroons. Another implication for organizing a plebiscite is that the southern Cameroons, Ambazonian, belongs to the people of the southern and to no one else. The people of that territory constitute a unit of self-determination. So when people start talking about the sovereignty over the southern, that sovereignty vests only in the people of the southern Cameroon. And no other people, no other country, no other territory can claim a superior right over the right of the people of that territory to that territory. It also means that the international community and international law recognizes that the people of the southern Cameroons or Ambazonia are entitled to self-determination as an inalienable right that inures to them. And that is why the southern Cameroon frontiers which were neither demarcated, delimited by the people of the southern Cameroon or French Cameroon, but by the powers. Britain, the boundary with Nigeria, frontier with Nigeria between Britain and Germany, and the boundary with French Cameroon between Britain and France. Those borders still remain and will ever remain. Nothing can change them until you have a subsequent treaty that can do that, but that hasn't happened. Of course, the other question that may be asked, what about ethnicity? I've heard people say that. Again, there is no substantial ethnic connection between Ambazonia and French Cameroon. What you do have, in certain localities, you have ethnic communities that sit across the common frontier. But this phenomenon is a common phenomenon you find everywhere in Africa. On the other side with Nigeria, we have communities that sit across the common frontier. Nigeria had tried to use that also as a means for claiming the southern Cameroon as part of Nigeria. That was rejected by the international community. So French Cameroon cannot use the fact they have some localized communities that sit across the frontier and say, because of that, therefore you are part of French Cameroon. Again, that also must be rejected. You look at all Africa, you have the same phenomenon. Even in Europe, you have the same phenomenon. Whole communities. Human beings are human beings. They want to feel where they are. And in any case, these boundaries were not delimited, defined, and demarcated, taking into account ethnicity. So that fact must be discounted as a reason for saying that Ambazonia is part of French Cameroon. Again, I will submit, if we were to say that, then Kuwait should not even exist today. It should be part of Iraq. If we were to say that, then East Timor should not exist. It should be part of Indonesia. If we were to say that, then Bangladesh and Pakistan should not even exist. They should be part of India. I mean, I can multiply this example, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of them. That's to show the absurdity of asserting that because you have ethnic connection, therefore, the people involved with that ethnic connection constitute one country. Modern states are not founded on ethnicity. I'll submit to you that there has emerged under international law a general rule imposing a duty of non-recognition of territorial and other situations brought about in breach of international law. That one is firmly well established under international law. And then you might ask, what is the evidence of colonization of Ambazonian by French Cameroon? I'll take you back to 1959. At the United Nations, when the question of the independence of the Southern Cameroon was being discussed at the United Nations, questions were raised about, if you saw the thing there, this is a small territory with competing claims. Nigeria want to grab, French Cameroon want to grab. And the question was asked, what guarantees do we have that this territory is not going to be grabbed by either of its larger neighbors? The president of French Cameroon, Amadou Ahidjo, mounted the rostrum, the UN General Assembly, and said, I'm giving you my undertaking and my country, that under no circumstances are we going to annex or colonize the British Southern Cameroons. Because if we did, that would spell the death knell for those peoples. All we want is a model vivendi with these people. That is a declaration in 1959 before the United Nations. The rest is history. French Cameroon never kept his word. Now the plebiscite question was framed. Do you wish to achieve independence by joining Nigeria or French Cameroon? I want to call attention to the fact that the phraseology of that plebiscite question was advisedly done. The United Nations could simply have said, do you want to join Nigeria or do you want to join French Cameroon? They could simply have said so. They chose to say, do you wish to achieve independence? The reason is simple. The law of the United Nations and the creation of mandatory and trust territory was not to enable their colonization by successive or latter-day colonizers. Those territories, by virtue of Article 76B of the United Nations Charter, had to be led to independent self-government. They had to. So the United Nations could not simply have said, do you want to join? That would mean they were transferring the territory without having achieved the objective of the United Nations Charter to another country. And so they said, do you wish to achieve independence? So independence had to be achieved before the question of joining. And that joining also, even, was an eventuality that had to come on the completion of certain due processes. So the achievement of independence had to be, and that is why if you look at the United Nations General Assembly, Resolution 1608-15 of the 25th April 1961, it endorsed the independence. It says, endorsed the decision of the people of the Southern Cameroon to achieve independence. When it came to joining, it said, urges the concerned parties to enter into quick talks and negotiation and finalize the arrangement by which this joining was going to take place. Two-stage thing, independence. Then the question of joining, it left it to the parties to negotiate that and to finalize that, because the Independence Day was set for 1st October 1961. So, that was our plebiscite thing. But what happened? Disaster struck. On the 1st of September, French Cameroon, knowing very well, the United Nations has set 1st of October as the date of independence. On the 1st of September, in its parliament, it decided to annex an annexation law, claiming the Southern Cameroon as part of its territory that had been returned to it by Great Britain and the United Nations. Incredible as it is. It did that. And then it all concealed all of that by a pretended so-called federation. You can't have a federation between countries. Only one party decides what kind of federation is going to be. So that was what I call an absorptive federation. On the 30th of September, on the eve of that independence, the British, and this has always thrown me at loggerheads to the British, even when I go to the UK. They invited a foreign leader. The president of French Cameroon was a foreign head of state, had nothing to do with the Southern Cameroon. They invited him to the Southern Cameroons and transferred power to him. You would have thought that they would transfer to the functional government. There was a government in Boya. There was a government in the Southern Cameroon. There was a prime minister. They would have transferred power to him. But no. They invited this foreign head of state who landed in Ambazonia, and then they transferred power. An incredible situation of the British transferring power over its colonial territory to another country that has nothing whatsoever to do with the colonization of that territory. And then French Cameroon took the territory over as successor colonial authority in the Southern Cameroon. So on 1st October, instead of there being independence, what did people witness? French Cameroon sent a proconsul to take over the Southern Cameroon, send a military force, send a gendarmerie force, and the whole country was occupied. There was no decolonization. The United Nations had said the trusteeship was going to end on the 1st of October. Yes, indeed the trusteeship ended. The British left. But that did not mean the Southern Cameroon achieved independence. That is why we make the case that there was simply a succession of colonial authorities. The end of British rule, the commencement of French Cameroon rule. And that is why you find that this whole thing, protests, since 1961, 62, every year people have been protesting, but every protest has been met with violent repression until the people felt the only security for them, as they have a right to existence, was to accept the independence which they voted for, which was endorsed by the United Nations. And they proclaimed that independence under the sovereign name of Federal Republic of Ambazonian. The rest is history. The repression, the genocidal attack on the people, which was launched. A whole army, the Air Force, the Navy, the Land Force invaded that small territory. As we speak, there are no less than 15,000 military men from French Cameroon occupying the Southern Cameroons with tanks, with gunship, helicopter gunship, and all of this, the whole territory. The whole territory is being occupied, and our people are fighting back. And like was remarked there, we are fighting back, as we must do. We are bound by the law of the United Nations and domestic law to fight back in self-defense, and our fighting, of course, constitutes a just fight and a just war. Thank you very much.